Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the BCA-SCAL COVID Safe Restart webinar, working together towards COVID Safe and Restart Ready. My name is Hui Wen from BCA Academy. We are very grateful to have the Singapore Contractors Association Limited SCAL in joining us today to organize this live webinar. As construction activities gradually resume, we would like to welcome you to this platform to engage the builder community on the COVID Safe Restart requirements to facilitate the restarting process, as well as to receive ground-up feedback on the safe restart process. We hope to share with you the key policies considerations and engage you on how we could work together to best facilitate a safe restart for our sector while ensuring the safety of the greater community. As such, we will not dwell too deeply on the administrative details of procedures and processes in this webinar, but do assure that our officers will be working with you as you go through the administrative processes as listed in the published restart circulars. We thank you for your understanding. Before we start, please note that as participants, you are on mute setting. Should you have any questions about the discussion topics, you may do so by clicking the Q&A button on the screen to type in your queries. When we get to the Q&A session at the end of this webinar, we will also be activating the raise hand function to take live questions from the audience. Should you wish to ask a question verbally at that time, do click the raise hand icon. Do also note that when the session ends, you'll be directed to access an evaluation form after you have exited the webinar. Once submitted, you'll be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. We are pleased to have Architect Tai Lee Siang, Executive Director of BuildXG of BCA, to chair the session. Together with him, we have Mr. Ng Yek Ming, President of the Singapore Contractors Association Limited SCAL, Engineer Chew Kiat Chuan, Group Director of Building and Engineering, Commissioner of Building Control BCA, Engineer Grace Wu, Center Director IBuildSG, Group Director of Manpower Strategy and Planning BCA, and Mr. Tan Chin Kiat, Group Director of Business Development of BCA. Without ado, let us invite our webinar chairperson to deliver his welcome remarks. Edie Tai, please.
Well, very good morning to each and every one of you, members of SCAL, and also want to acknowledge the presence of SCAL President, Mr. Ng Yek Ming. Now, this is an exceptional and extraordinary time, and thank you for taking time to join this. And I think we have close to 3,000 on this webinar. Now, BCA issued our advisory on COVID-19 restart in late May 2020, when MTF also announced that circuit breaker measures will gradually ease from 2nd June 2020. Construction will also be allowed to resume in phases, but in a safe and controlled manner. So let me just emphasize that in a safe and controlled manner to minimize the risk of a COVID-19 resurgence. We are very mindful of not having this resurgence, especially in the sector that's heavily under this impact of COVID-19. Now, key to a safe restart are 3 fundamental measures that you will hear later from the presentations: COVID-safe workforce, COVID-safe worker accommodation and transport, COVID-safe worksite. I just want to acknowledge the role that builders play in this country. Your contribution to our society and economy is very significant, and all the more brought into limelight during this time. And we do fully understand the economic challenges faced by all of you. And we want to thank you for helping to bring the outbreak in this sector down in collaboration with various agencies and value chain players. Without your collaboration and your effort, we would not be able to reach this stage. Now, moving forward, we need to continue the spirit of unity so that we have a safe restart. Now, on this note, I'd like to thank SCAL, and represented here by President Ng Yek Ming, for working closely with TACs, agencies, and BCA to provide feedback, very positive, constructive suggestions, and also share the information to all of you members. I also want to acknowledge your generosity towards the construction workers, and it was highly commendable when you generously donated towards their well-being. Now, before I hand over to the presenters, the questions are already coming up very quickly. I encourage you to put forward your questions through the Q&A button, even as the presenter speaks, so that I can collate all the questions into meaningful packages for our panelists to address. Also, you may also raise your hand, but I try to do that at the last part. We will save time for you so that you can also raise questions through direct interaction. So without further delay, one more thing. All those questions that are not answered, we will gather them, also put into a package of Q&A and also made available to the webinar participants. Now, without further delay, I will hand back over to MC to begin today's proceedings. MC, please.
Thank you, Edie Tai. Next, we'll go through an overview of today's program. BCA colleagues will be sharing on the overall plan for a safe and controlled phased restart of the construction sector, which includes the phased approach and an overview of the respective COVID-safe criteria. First up, we have Mr. Louis Chong, Senior Manager, Strategic Planning and Transformation Office, BCA, who will be sharing on the overview of the COVID-safe restart plan for the construction sector. Louis, over to you, please.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Louis from BCA, and I'll be taking you through the COVID-safe restart plan for the construction sector. A quick recap: since 7 April, when the circuit breaker period started, while most works were suspended, a small proportion of critical projects and essential services continued work with safe management measures in place. The outbreak caused disruption for many, and to help our firms tide over, various support measures were introduced since the Unity Budget was announced on 18 February to help businesses protect jobs and preserve capacity and capability. With the circuit breaker lifted starting this week, restarting our economy will be done in a measured and progressive manner, with priority given to critical sectors and businesses that operate in settings with lower transmission risk. We have seen in some countries that a second wave can emerge, so we have to be cautious and put in place necessary safeguards. Particularly for our sectors, we should not rush to open up all activities from day one, as the majority of cases have been foreign workers and most of them from construction. Instead, our restart must be measured so that we can minimize the reoccurrence of large clusters. And this must be so because of the nature of our sector, with multiple subcontracting and supplier layers leading to high transmission risk in activities due to close interlinkages and high mixing among workers. We know subcontractors typically work on multiple projects with teams of workers intermingling, and workers from various accommodations actively interact after working hours. So protocols and measures are required to control this risk. Starting from this week on 2nd June, works will resume gradually, adding another 5% of the workforce in the month of June. Importantly, all works must have safe management measures and will require approval before restarting. Workers must also be tested before they start work. And so, works will resume in a phased manner and with the pace of resumption dependent on the readiness of firms to implement the safe restart criteria and how soon workers can be tested and cleared for work. Taking a phased approach will also allow us to pilot and refine the restart criteria and iron out any teething issues so that we can be confident to ramp up in the later phases without risking further outbreaks. COVID safety is critical to the successful restart of our sector. The restart will be approved by project, and companies involved must meet these 3 rules before they are allowed to resume construction works. These rules are premised on the principle of cohorting workers at project level and are important as the condition of work site accommodation, transportation, and workers' health status and behavior are crucial towards mitigating any potential resurgence of infections in the workforce and the community. My colleagues will elaborate on these rules later on. As mentioned earlier, various support measures has been introduced to help firms tide over the COVID situation. First, to help offset manpower costs and to protect livelihood of residents, the Job Support Scheme (JSS) and Foreign Worker Levy and Waiver and Rebate was introduced for the months of April and May. And to help with companies' cash flow and business sustainability, the government had allowed for TOL land rental waiver in April and May. Firms could also claim a one-off advance payment in this month and make fortnightly payments for public sector projects. The COVID bill was also passed to remove liability for non-performance of contracts due to COVID-19 for 6 months. And lastly, for development projects, PCP and ABSD remission dates were allowed for a 6 months extension. Following, we have received industry feedback for additional support to tide through this period. And the government has set aside a substantial budget to help firms in the construction sector as we restart. First, as announced in DPM budget speech on 26 May, the Job Support Scheme and Foreign Worker Levy Waiver and Rebate will be extended to help firms with manpower costs. Second, to help ease firms' cash flow and ensure business sustainability, the public sector will provide support by co-sharing the prolongation costs of contractor for delays arising from the circuit breaker and phase restart and the loss of productivity due to compliance with the restart criteria. These include operating expenses incurred, such as equipment when projects are halt. Thirdly, we recognize that the restart criteria, while necessary for a safe restart, will be an additional imposition. Hence, we will provide the following measures to defray compliance costs. As part of safe accommodation requirement, the temporary bridge loan program will help to ease cash flow for building CDQs and TOL queues. For regular swabbing of workers as part of safe workforce requirement, the cost will be borne by the government until August 2020. Beyond that, we also work out the arrangement on how the cost can be shared among parties. Lastly, as part of the safe work site requirement to appoint safe management officers, we will be co-funding 50% of their salary for a 6-month window from September 2020. Importantly, we cannot go back to business as usual pre-COVID. As an industry, we will all have to come together to be able to deal with a COVID world and emerge strongly. So this is my last slide. Lastly, to adjust to the new operating environment, we are lining up a series of training programs and engagement to prepare everyone on the safe management measures and to keep industry informed on the policies consideration and requirements. We have started the COVID safe training for workers last week on 25th May, and we will be launching a series of further training for safe management officers and safe leaders. Other industry engagement programs will also be launched in the coming months to help everyone as we restart. We seek your support to prepare our industry together for the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Next, we have Mr. Felix Tan, Deputy Director, Manpower Development Department, BCA, will be presenting the first COVID-safe criteria on the key areas, the roles and responsibilities of employers and employees involved in construction projects and works. Felix, please.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Felix. Okay, so let's go into this. Okay, so under the safe workforce criteria, there's 7 key responsibilities for both the employers and the employees. So the details can be found in the website listed here. Okay, so for today's focus, I'll be touching on these 4 key criteria. So for 1 and 2, it basically talks about the system to track the health status of the workers, including regular testing and surveillance. Okay, so next on number 3 is in terms of the training of the workers. And lastly is in terms of responsibilities of employers to manage the workers' movement. Okay, so for good health status of workers, employers should ensure that employees undergo a regular swab test and fulfill the swab requirement for the various types of works. Okay, so a lot of employers, what you've been doing now is to regularly take temperature twice a day. So please continue to do that, and also to check for the COVID-19 related respiratory symptoms. Okay, keep the record for the minimum of 28 days for inspection by the government agency. Now, for employees, they also need to ensure that they are not on any quarantine orders, stay-home notices, and also definitely should not be tested negative to continue to work. Okay. Similarly, they should take their temperatures twice a day and to inform the supervisor if they're unwell, and please go see a doctor. Okay, so next is on the swabbing requirements. So for this slide, we're looking at the S-Pass and work permit holders for the construction sector. Okay, so they need to undergo swab tests before they're allowed to work. Then subsequently, they need to be subjected to regular swab tests every 2 weeks. Okay, so this requirement applies to also S-Pass and work permit holders from other sectors. So these swabbing requirements are for the small landed properties, site maintenance, site safety, vector control and all that. So this also apply after construction work has started. Now for the renovation works, those not working at construction site, they may proceed to start work first, but subsequently they are subjected to regular swab tests. So those who are already carrying out the earlier permitted activities, they can continue to work, but they need to undergo swab tests by 15 June. So for those who are stationed inside the company's office premises, swab requirement is not required. Okay, next for Singapore citizens, PRs as well as EP, they also need to undergo swab tests within the first 2 weeks of starting work. Then subsequently, they will need to go for regular swab tests every 2 weeks. Okay, so for those who are not working at construction site, they are not required to undergo swab tests. So I'd like to encourage attendees here, if let's say for this group of people who are not required to go for site, please refrain from going there. So if you do conduct any kind of site, any kind of meetings and all that, try to explore other options like online meetings and all that. Okay, next is on awareness of COVID-19. So all employees should make sure the employees undergo the mandatory training, which is the COVID Safe Workers training offered at BCA Academy. This also includes those COVID Safe Workers leaders. So for every 20 employees, you should have 1 COVID Safe leaders. And employers should also provide educational materials regularly to ensure that the employees are all updated on the latest prevention of COVID-19 and what are the good practices. Okay, when possible, also conduct briefing monthly to employees on what these good practices are. So for the employees, before starting work, they should actually attend and pass the training. Okay, so this will be the last slide in terms of responsibilities of the employers to ensure that the employees stay at the accommodation after working hours, so that we can contain the to ensure that this social mixing, all this is being controlled. So this includes their rest days as the social contact remains restricted. So inside application form, please do indicate whether your project is also subjected to NEA's no work rule on Sunday and public holiday. And do stagger their employees off day throughout the week. So for employees, they should make sure that they stay at the accommodation after working hours, including their rest days. So that's all for my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Coming up, Ms. Vivian Fu, Deputy Director, Strategic Engineering Projects Department, BCA, will bring us through some key measures for COVID-safe worksite infused with tech-enabled audit and inspection. Vivian, please.
very good morning to all of you. I'm Vivian. Let me bring you through for the COVID-safe worksite documents. We have a common desired outcome between us and you, which is to ensure no resurgence of infection at worksite after restart. So in this table here, what we want to impress on to builders is that there must be multiple layers of defense at worksite during restart. So I'll start from the flow from the top to bottom. The builder plays a key role in ensuring this. So what can the builder do? By putting in place strict management measures at site to monitor the health status of workers consistently and informing BCA through daily submission, and to ensure that all workers and personnel adopt the digital tech tools of Trace Together and Safe Entry. So apart from that, the next layer is the Safe Management Officer and Safe Distancing Officer. The requirements are quite similar. We have done it in such a way that it's quite similar to the RERTO scheme, the hierarchy, so that the SDOs are actually assisting the SMO in his duties to ensure that the safe management measures are carried out on site at all times. Then apart from that, in terms of BCA, we are also having a layer. This is our layer of defense. So what we're doing is, I think what you all know it is to process all the project applications that are coming in, to ensure that there are all these three restart criteria that are in place before they are allowed to restart. Apart from that, after approving the applications, we also have an A&I team, the audit and inspection team, that will go down to site to check, to do random audit checks to ensure that safe management measures are in place before works are started. So I'll go more into the guidelines for the worksite document. Sorry, just give me a minute. Yeah. Okay, so I've actually compiled in quite a few slides, but in this webinar, we would just like to focus on a few key areas that you should look out for. So in terms of, just now I've mentioned the importance of the builder appointing SMOs and SDOs to ensure that the SMM measures are carried out on site. So the SMO actually has quite a heavy role of his duties in ensuring that he conducts inspections and checks to make sure that the workers are actually complying to all these safe distancing measures at site. In addition, we are also asking for SDOs to assist the SMOs in his roles. So if you look at this table right here, we have tiered it in such a way as what I mentioned earlier, the RERTO scheme. So for this, the difference is it's based on number of workers. So the more number of workers you have, then the requirements for the number of SMOs and SDOs will increase. But we have also mentioned in the guidelines that the role of the SMO SDOs, they can also do one dual role. So they can also hold a dual role at site. So they can be your senior foreman or your WSHO officer. So these are the requirements here that you can read in detail. Okay, I want to go on to the next item here. Okay, so just now we have mentioned on the importance of contact tracing. So the contact tracing is, the contact tracing is important so that if there is one worker that is found to be infected, the contact tracing can be done expeditiously. So we would like to stress on the importance on the having safe entry and that all workers have the Trace Together installed on their phones at all times when they are at site. So I'll move on to the cohorting. I think there are quite a few questions on the cohorting. So I'll spend a bit of time explaining this part on what we meant by cohorting. Workers that are working on the same project, our recommendation is for them to be cohorted together within a dedicated accommodation. So what does it mean by dedicated accommodation? We have explained here that an on-site CTQ is very much preferred, as it reduces the need for workers to be transported to and from site and accommodation. So if that cannot be achieved, then at least you can have off-site dedicated dormitories. So the purpose is to cohort workers working on the same construction site together as far as possible. So these are our requirements on segregated teams. We are advising builders to segregate their teams according to the type of activities that they are doing. So for each team, they should be grouped into workers that are carrying out the same activity and working on the zone on site. So I'll explain more by illustrating. So I'd like to carry you through from the dormitory, the CTQs, right to the worksite itself. So this segregation is to be carried through. This is the dormitory itself, and how, for illustration purposes, we have actually shown how some projects have done it. What they did is that this is the same dormitory, but different blocks. So for different teams, they are staying on different blocks and also within different floors. So for example, if you are talking about zone 1, team A, then they'll be staying on block 1, level 2. At the same time, if you're talking about zone 3 and team C, they will be staying on the same dormitory, but on a different block on the same floor. So when they are having their staggered breaks or using their shared facilities, they would be using it at staggered timings or at different locations. So depending on how big the dormitory is and how big the worksite is, what we are encouraging builders is to stagger their timings for shared facilities if there's not enough room to do different facilities. If there is enough space, then we will recommend that they have separate shared facilities totally. So from there, when they move from the CTQs to worksite, we're also asking for separate entry and exit points. So it can be as simple as they are using the same turnstile system, but you just have a barricade to say that team A, you come in from this barricade, and from team B, you're using a different barricade. So this is carried through on the worksite itself, where it's done by separation of zones. So if you're looking at the table here, this is what I mentioned earlier. So each team is separated by their own work zones according to the activity that they are doing. So if you're looking at zone A, they're actually doing the form work, force work, whereas for zone B, they are preparing for concrete casting really. So between the zones, they are supposed to keep at least a minimum of 2 meters separation between their workers of different zones. So for workers of the same zone, it's just the same baseline requirements from MOM's guide, which is the 1 meter. But workers from different zones should keep at least 2 meters away from each other. So what is the purpose of doing all this? What we are trying to impress here is that this will be the new normal when work sites restart. So it's to create a bubble within a bubble itself. The desired outcome is the same for you and for us. It is to ensure that when we contain all these workers within the bubble, there's a low risk of resurgence to community, no spread to community, and no resurgence of infection in work sites. So I'll explain the bubble a bit. What we did just now was when we explained the segregation between the work site and the accoms, right, the purpose is to bubble up each team. So if you're looking at this, right, let's say if there's one worker in team A who gets infected, what happened is the bubble bursts. But even if the bubble bursts here, right, it's still contained within here. Why? Because team A and B are basically staying in the same block. If you remember the illustration that I was showing just now, so it's contained within this semicircle. So even if it bursts, in the worst case, it will be contained within here. So out of this semicircle itself, it's still contained within the big bubble. So what we are trying to do is to ensure that there is a low risk of infections that would be transferred to the community. So that's the main purpose of segregation and having strict SMM measures. So just now I've already mentioned quite a bit on segregated teams. So we have also mentioned some of them in the guidelines on how you can actually do that easily on site, like providing visual identifiers. So it can be as simple as like a netball team player, like someone wearing red, another person wearing green. So when the workers see each other on site, they will know that they are from different zones and they're not supposed to be closer to each other with a minimum of 2 meters. So these are some of the examples of how this can be done. Similarly, for the movement control plan, where they can actually, the builder can plan out like separate access and shared facilities, staggered timings, etc. So these are, again, some of the examples that I've already mentioned earlier. So you can read if you want more of the details. In order to reduce physical interaction between different types of personnel at site, we have also tried to separate between the types of personnel that need to go to the work site. So for example, you have your administrative or management staff that work only in the site office. And you also have like your safety supervisors, the QPs, supervisors like RERTOs, and you also have short-term workers, the specialist contractors, like those that go to site 1 to 2 hours a week, like the I&M people, disinfection crew, or people who go there for at least 1 to 2 days a week. So some of the commonly asked questions is, are they allowed and do they need to be cohorted? Actually, they are all found in the guidelines. So if you read through, you will see that we have actually provided some guidelines on what can be done. So the purpose, similarly, is to make sure that they do not interact with each other, these different tiers of personnel, as far as possible. Similarly, for the delivery and logistic crew, this is for communal shared facilities. We have encouraged that the builder is to provide individually packed meals. And we also have provided the how to ensure cleanliness at worksite premises. So this is the last part for the guidelines for worksite. What I wanted to say here is that this is a very important thing that we hope all builders must have in place. So one is that they must have an evacuation plan if there is a suspected case, and they must have a follow-up plan for a confirmed case, so that if there is such an instance where a worker falls ill, unfortunately, and then is infected with COVID-19, at least all this can kick in expeditiously, and the worker can be separated from the rest of the workers quickly. So in my last slide here, I would like to talk a bit of how we can use digital tech tools, to leverage on digital tech tools to help us do like self-monitoring. So I know some builders are asking that how do you have so many eyes to look on site and to ensure that everything is done properly? So here are some of the suggestions of using digital tech tools to carry out all this self-monitoring. So we include things like what I mentioned earlier already, trace together, safe entry, and also the health monitoring. So the daily health monitoring, and that they should be submitted to BCA on a daily basis. And lastly is, how do you ensure, here are some of the we have suggestions that we have to ensure SDM. So some of them would be like to have CCTV coverage on site especially for communal shared facilities area, so that when there's congregation or when you can see from the CCTV that the people are closer than 1 meter apart, then you can actually alert the SMO. So these are digital tech tools that can assist him in carrying out his monitoring works at site as well. Then apart from that, you can also use AI cameras. So here are some of the suggestions that we have for builders. That's my last slide. So with that, I'll end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Lastly, Mr. Ted Chan, Executive Manager, Procurement Policies Department, BCA, will be sharing with us on the desired outcomes and key requirements of COVID-safe accommodation and transportation requirements. Ted, please.
Good morning, everyone. So today I'll be taking you through the safe accommodations and safe transportation criteria. So just before I begin, I'd like to highlight that For the safe accommodation and safe transportation, we are putting the health and safety of our workers as the top priority. So just about a month ago, I think we've seen cases of more than 1,000 infections a day, and I think our main focus is to try to prevent a resurgence of something like that happening. So we understand that our requirements currently are going to be quite stringent, and we hope that you understand where we're coming from. Okay, so in designing our criteria, we've actually looked at a few desired outcomes, and these were the desired outcomes to help guide the way that we've designed these criteria. So the first is that we wanted to prevent the resurgence of the COVID-19 cases, and mainly it's to help prevent this resurgence within the different accommodations across Singapore. Second, we also want to be able to provide better and more livable accommodations moving forward for all our foreign workers. Third, we want to be able to effectively distribute and mix the workers within the different accommodation types, so we can create an ideal environment, an ideal accommodation landscape catered for the construction sector. And this will be having the PBDs anchored by the anchor tenants and cohorted in practical manners for the contractors to draw upon this pool of workers. And also we want to be able to provide and facilitate the on-site housing which can serve our cohorting needs. And lastly, the desired outcome for our transport is that we want to ensure safe and sustainable transport arrangements so that we can minimize all risk of COVID-19 transmissions to the public. So just an overview of the criteria that we'll be going through. We had 8 criteria under our safe accommodation and safe transport. Criteria A, D, E, F, G, not highlighted. These are the ones that we will not be looking at today, but they are following very closely to MOM's guidelines. So the more critical ones that we will be focusing on are criteria B, C, and H. So I'll just move straight into it. So for the cohorting and segregation, we've come up with a matrix to describe the treatments to the different types of workers across different types of accommodations in order to meet the dedicated accommodation criteria. So for the types of workers, we have 3 types. If you just follow the pointer, we have type A, which are the project-specific construction workers, type B, which are the non-project specific construction workers, and type C, which are the construction account workers. And for the accommodation types, we have the specified dormitories, which are listed over here, and the non-specified dormitories, which are mainly the HDBs and PRP units. So taking you through one by one, for the PBDs and the FCDs, the treatment for the type A workers is that they will have to be cohorted by the floors, and within the PBDs and FCD floors, they are only consisting of workers deployed to work at one construction site. So at the same time, on each of these floors, they have to be away from the type B and C workers as well. And for the type B and C workers, the treatment to them are very similar. So they cannot share the same floor. They cannot share the same floor as the other 2 types of workers, and they have to be further segregated into the different rooms based on their employers. Then moving on to the ancillary FCDs. So for the type A workers, in the ancillary FCDs, they can only be consisting of workers under that one employer, and they have to be further cohorted by project by floors. For the type B and C, the treatment for them are the same. So they have to only be consisting of workers under that same employer as well, and they will have to be segregated into different rooms by projects. And for the CTQs and the TOLQs, for the type A workers, they can only be consisting of construction workers that belong or that are working on that construction site where the CTQ or TOLQ belongs to. So these workers should not be working on any other projects at other construction sites. Neither shall any construction workers from other sites be working and staying in these accommodations. And for the type B and type C workers, this will not be applicable to them because they will not be allowed to be staying in the CTQs or TOLQs in this case. And then moving on to the non-specified dormitories. So for the type A workers, we understand that there may be cases of insufficient capacity in your on-site accommodations, And so in such scenarios, we will allow the Type A workers to remain in their HDB PRP, provided that they are cohorted based on the workers that are staying with them. They have to be from the same project site, and they cannot be staying with any of the Type B and Type C workers within the same unit as well. And for the Type B and C workers, again, the treatment is very similar. So they will have to be staying with workers under that employer as well, and they cannot be staying with any of the other types of workers in the same unit. So just to note, these requirements are applicable to the work permit holders and S-Pass holders only. And our intent here is not really to try to move all the workers to the site accommodations, but it's more to reduce the intermixing of workers between sites. So moving on, for the safe transportation criteria, sorry. So the treatment for all the types of workers across all the types of accommodations is the same. So the employers are to provide point-to-point dedicated transportation for all their workers. And so in this case, the dedicated transportation will be referring to other employer-provided vehicles like buses, vans, lorries, or the workers' personal vehicles. And this can also include cycling or walking if your site is close enough to your accommodation. Then also, there is a new MOM guideline on the employer-provided vans and lorries for ferrying workers. So currently, MOM has instructed that for all the vans and lorries ferrying the workers, there should be a 25% reduction in the maximum passenger capacity. So what this means is that if you have a lorry that could previously serve 20 people, now you would only be able to ferry 15 people. Yeah, and with this new requirement in place, there is no need for the workers to be spaced 1 meter apart in the vehicles, but all the workers should still be wearing their masks. And one more point to take note is that for all the different types of workers across the accommodation types, there should be no public transport allowed for them. The current stand is that Grab and taxi is also considered as public transport, so please take note of that. And again, all these requirements are applicable to the work permit holders and the S-Pass holders. And on the last criteria that we want to focus on is on the SMOs, SDOs, and the COVID-safe worker leaders, or the CSWLs. So the SMOs and SDOs, these are the SMOs and SDOs appointed for the safe worksite criteria. They may also be able to double up as these roles for the safe accommodation criteria. And for the CSWLs, we will require that at least one be appointed per room in the dorms, or one per unit in the non-specified dorms. Looking at the roles and responsibilities of the SMOs and SDOs, they're actually very similar to the safe worksite criteria, the roles for the SMOs and SDOs there, but the main difference is that all these roles and responsibilities will be applied to the accommodation context instead. So I wouldn't really be going through this in detail. Mainly it's for the CSWL. So the CSWL will basically act as the point of contact between the workers and the employers, or the SDOs and SMOs, if there's no SMOs or SDOs staying within the accommodation. So what these CSWLs will be doing is to help ensure that their roommates will be conducting the daily temperature exercise, to make sure that they are basically following all the safety management measures in place, and to help keep track of their workers at all times. And one very critical role that the CSWL will play is that if there are any suspected COVID cases, or if their roommates are feeling unwell, they will be the point of contact, and they will be the one to notify any of the SMOs, SDOs, employers, or the dorm operators, so that we can take immediate action. And lastly, also, if there's any non-compliances with the SMMs, then these CSWLs will be the ones to report to their superiors. Yeah. So this is my last slide, and I'm actually done right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Right now, we will move on to the Q&A session. You may raise your question by clicking the raise hand or Q&A button on your screen. Over to you, Edie Tai.
Okay, do you see me? Just waiting for the, okay, good. So before we start, the questions are coming in really fast and furious. We're hitting 829 questions here. I'll try my best to answer them, but before we do that, let me invite President of SCAL, Mang, to address the audience. Mang, please.
Thank you, Lee Xiang. And hi, everyone. I'm Mang from SCAL. First of all, I would like to thank BCA for inviting SCAL and also having me in this webinar. I know that you have many questions, 854, and are looking for the answer. Before that, I think maybe allow me to share with you some of the initiative SCAL have done and are doing now over the COVID period. When COVID was first reported on 23rd January, SCAL have actually started meeting with many stakeholders such as MOM, BCA, Dormitory Association to discuss on the measure how to prevent COVID from spreading among foreign workers. But the situation get very bad in April. Circuit breaker was implemented on 3rd April, 7th April for 2 months and ended on 1st June. We saw the huge impact COVID has on the construction industry. So therefore, we quickly set up the Back to Work Task Force to engage and work with various regulating agencies such as BCA and MOM to have a smooth restart for our projects. The task force is to come up with practical approaches to restart work smoothly and safely. The task force consists of 9 council members and 5 working groups. For the past 6 weeks, the 5 working groups are working on financial impact and financial assistance to the industry, contractual obligations of our contracts, and the 3 key main areas to restart our project: safe workforce, safe accommodation and transportation, and safe worksite, which just shared by BCA speakers. Some of the measures are stringent, could be difficult to implement, and it will also slow down our progress and reduce our site productivity. In the shorter term, this is needed to curb and prevent the second wave of COVID-19. We can't afford to have a second wave of spreading in the construction industry. Developers and GPEs must accept and understand more understanding to the contractors that the compliances to this new normal will definitely contribute to delays and also extra cost to the projects. We are also in discussion with BCA to tweak some of the requirements according to the actual site constraints or be more flexible in enforcing some rules when the cases subside to a low level. Let me share some of the initiative which SCAL has done. We have set up a SCAL COVID-19 fund to provide some help to our smaller SMEs. We pulled monies from our bigger members and got some support from government agencies such as BCA and ESG. To date, we have raised more than $1 million. To help the personal hygiene of workers, we work with MWC to distribute reusable masks, sanitizer and soap for 32,000 workers staying in these FCDs. In appreciation to our frontline healthcare workers, we distributed 1,800 care packages to the workers in Alexandra Hospital and Mount Alvernia Hospital. COVID-19 hit very hard on our industry. We have worked with government agency and to put up requests and sending letters to minister to seek government's help to help company to stay afloat. Despite the generous support from government in terms of JSS and levy rebate. With zero revenue, companies are still suffering losses. The government subsidies can only cushion part of the financial impact and is not sustainable in the long run. The industry has to stand up on its feet quickly to restart work. To help thinning out our density in the PBDs, we are working closely with BCA to build more temporary dormitories at site, TOLQ, factories, TLQ, and other empty buildings. BCA has set up a one-stop service, a green lane to expedite the approval of dormitories. If you have any empty spaces or factory spaces that is suitable for dormitory, you can contact SCAL Secretariat or BCA. We can facilitate the submission for approval. Together with MOM, we also set up a portal to job match some of the displaced workers to new employers. We are also helping BCA to match some of the recovered workers who can start work immediately for essential work. Other initiative that we are working on is we are seeking clarity on the swab testing plan with MOM, and also working out the regular swab test costs beyond August. We are also in discussion with BCA on the restart approval for project based on the site readiness. And the last one is we are also coming out some measure on to deal with the cluster outbreak prevention at dormitories and worksite. As a TAC, our top priority is to get our industry quickly, to stand up quickly and safely. We gather feedback from the industry and work with the authorities to come up with more practical and efficient way to restart our project. That's all from me for what SCAL has done and what we are doing. Back to you, Lee Xiang.
Thank you, Ye Ming. Now, I know that many of you sent in a lot of questions. We're past 1,000 mark. And even as you listen to the presentation, I'm sure some of you have already picked up answers. So I'm just going through a sample of questions and try to bring the principles out. I know that some of these answers need very detailed, exact, concrete answers. We'll try to do them as well. If we can't cover now, we'll do so certainly after the webinar. Now, let us start off with safe workforce, because people is actually what makes the industry. So I'm going to kick off first with Grace to touch on a few pertinent issues. Swab test is one thing that comes up quite frequently. And I think what is interesting is also about the issue of SS code, health code, and third area will be recovered workers. So maybe I'd like Grace to, it may repeat or overlap with some of the earlier presentation, but no harm listening again. The higher principle of how swab test is planned and scheduled, and the question about who is actually conducting the swab test. So this is I just started with this question first. The rest are a bit detailed. In the meantime, if I may invite my panelists also look through the questions and pick up things that you think are important to the audience. Grace, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Chairperson. Actually, I have briefly taken a look at some of the questions. I'm able to go through all 1,000 questions at the moment, but actually not to worry, because after that, after this session, we'll also group some of these questions. Some of them are repeated as well, overlapping. So we'll also group these questions and give some response to the questions. Okay, in terms of like the swab test, right? There's I think actually in principle, I would encourage the project parties actually to first run through the safe construction criteria, because all these criteria run through and have an assessment that whether your project actually are ready to, based on those assessment, and can meet some of those requirements. And thereafter, right, you may need to make submissions for a restart. And from there, we can also pick up the, let's say if the workers are in the dormitory, then it will be subject to, actually it will be subject to clearance of the dormitory. And you know that MOM is actually starting to update in the schedule, in the current schedule, in the update which are the dormitories that are already cleared, and then there's also future upcoming dormitories that will be cleared. So do have an assessment, because actually a lot of your workers could still be in the dormitory and unable to come out for work. In that case, right, actually, if you have no workers in the first place, actually, it's very difficult for you to actually make a submission for the restart. So, but in any case, actually, if let's say the persons are in the non-dorm areas, and when the submission comes in, we will also look at BCA will concurrently work on scheduling the workers for swab tests in the meantime, until later on. There's this online system by HPB, because we are working closely with HPB, Health Promotion Board, and they are actually currently working on an online system, so that the future regular swab tests could be scheduled by the employer themselves. Yeah, so this is still ongoing. We keep you updated. And on the
so Grace, just a quick pause. So there are two kinds, the so-called PPD, FCD, and
yes,
that is being organized by MOM.
yes,
And you can
correct.
find the information on the blogs that are cleared on their website. And this is very important information. So, and this will be regularly updated as blogs are cleared. So
Yes.
then you can go and check whether your workers are also included in those clear blocks. Then for the other type, which is a non-dorm housing, then these will be as part and parcel of the project approval of restart, that BCA will facilitate the arrangement of the swabbing.
Yes,
Right?
correct.
So these are the two broad categories.
Yep, okay. And the other categories is also, I saw some of the questions asking, oh, if the person is actually working in a HQ office. HQ
That's
office,
right.
Full-time working in HQ office, and do not need to step into the site at all. And all this would not be required to do swab tests. But I want to also emphasize that these are HQ office, and site office is not part of it. Yeah.
Okay. There are questions about whether RERTO need to take swab tests.
If
And
the
HQ staff will visit site regularly.
Yeah. So I think actually online is also, please leverage on as much as digital technology that is available for you to actually minimize the need to go to site. But I understand that there is still a need for safety reason. Then in that case, to protect yourself and your family, it is important that you undergo the regular test regime. Yeah.
Okay. Now there's another question on rental workers. Maybe you can shed some light on rental workers swab test requirement.
Okay, so for renovation workers, right? When you submit the application, actually after you put in the application, and if your workers is staying in the non-dormitory, actually they could proceed to work, while BCA will concurrently also schedule them for swab tests. And on the other hand, if let's say the workers are actually still in the dormitory, then it will be subject to the clearance of the dormitory whether they are able to come out for work. Yeah.
Yeah. So rental contractor, pay attention. They can, once you receive the approval, they can start, right? But there may be some workers that, we're talking about the foreign workers, then swab tests will be arranged, right?
Yes, correct.
Now, there was also a question, can employer arrange own swab tests for their own employees?
As far as I understand from MOH, actually, they at the clinics, for example, or hospital, actually they will only accept patients. That means those with syndromes, acute respiratory syndromes, for swab tests. So if let's say asymptomatic, actually today they are not accepting. Hence, actually for swab tests to continue work, then in the meantime, actually it's by HPB Health Promotion Board.
Okay, thank you. Now, we move over to this health code. There are a number of questions that ask about the gray color versus the green, the red.
Yeah.
Can you shed some light on that?
Okay, so this health this access code is a new initiative put up by MOM together with MOH. So maybe I give some background, because this access code, right, will have some information. When you see a gray or color, actually behind this logic, there's also a few components that is involved. One is actually the swab test status, the QO status, whether it is a clean dorm or not, and whether it's a whitelisted workers. So because with all these combination, then it will be a green. But I must say that actually currently the system actually just rolled out on 2nd June. I also think that and as of now, I think some of the residences also need to be updated, because actually during this period there are also some changes. So if you have residences that's not updated yet, please also put it in. But I would also want to assure that if, let's say, during the circuit breaker period, that if your workers is already working, have already sought approval from BCA and already working, they would still be able to continue to work. And based on the earlier circular, that advisory that we have sent out, is actually we will continue to arrange for the swab test for these workers if they are staying in the community. And the deadline is actually 15 June. Then they will still be, till then they're able to work. Yeah.
Okay. Now we switch over to still on Grace, the topic on recovered workers. There are workers who have meet all the medical requirements and discharged. Do they return to their own dorms? And of course, the follow-on question is more critical, is actually how do we employ these recovered workers?
Yeah, okay. I think actually there is also some, for the recovered workers, we actually wish to work with the contractors also to endorse projects, critical projects. For example, if there is a need to build dormitory, which actually to house the workers or to thin down the density of the accommodation. So on this end, we will try to encourage the employers, even in temporary T-loan the workers for these recovered workers to continue to work. Because one thing is actually for recovered workers, they are not required to do swab tests for the moment for about 6 months. Yeah.
6 months. Yeah.
Yes. So I think this arrangement, actually we are working with SCAL as well. If there is interest from the members, actually we can also work through SCAL.
Okay, maybe I'll just bring Yek Ming in. Is there something, the setup or something like that within SCAL that can help out in matchmaking or organizing these recovered workers?
Yeah, for these recovered workers, if you need some workforce to start your essential works, you can actually contact our secretariat. We have a team of people try to job match some of the employers who need this worker to do the dormitories. Of course, I think there are a few criteria to meet. I think first is the job skill must be the same. If you need a carpenter, so probably you have to choose the carpenter. Then there's also salary. What kind of salary that the worker demand. So all these have to be met. Then after that, I think we have to also have a agreement that what is the loan period of the workers, and also when can I get back the workers. So I think this has to be threshed out in the agreement. Yeah.
Yes. There's also some standard agreements that both employers could refer to, but this is not I think this is a good reference. And if let's say the employers have mutual consent and to want to add in certain things or remove certain things, that's also all right as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move over to the next major topic, which is on safe, COVID-safe accommodation and transport. Before I ask the question to Chikiet, maybe if I can invite Chikiet to once again just talk about that single point of contact for the purpose of application. This is a very important initiative.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Yixiang. Okay. So maybe I just start off with by talking about the overview of the safe accommodation. Like, just want to reiterate some points. I think like what Ted has mentioned just now in his presentation, we are not trying to make life difficult for everyone, but rather is to really prevent the intermixing of workers from different projects, so as not to have any disruption to unnecessary disruption to different projects along the way. So of course, the easiest way is to actually have a on-site quarters, CTQ, which is only dedicated to one project. So that is where we work with the different agencies, as what SCAL has actually proposed, to actually set up a one-stop shop front to actually allow the application to actually facilitate the processing of all these CTQs, TOLQs, and TLQs. So like what Yeming has earlier mentioned, you can let SCAL know which are your projects, the tenure, the capacity that is required, and we will clear through the one-stop shop front on this. We'll share with you the so-called URL through SCAL as well. But this is not the only means to actually cohort workers. As progressively more dorms will be cleared up, we can also do some cohorting there. We have also received interest in actually understand from the dorm operators there are interest in some project teams that they want to book a whole block to house their entire workforce, not just from the main contractors, but as well as the subcontractors. I think that's a very good initiative that we can actually cohort the workers by blocks and prevent intermixing of workers unnecessarily. I think there's also this query about S-Pass holders, whether they need to be cohorted together with the work permit holders. I think as far as possible, we try, but of course, we also recognize that there are some with families here. I don't think we want to be seen as breaking up any families, so they can continue to stay with their families, but take the necessary precautions. If they are sharing a so-called HDB unit or PRP unit with some other friends who are from other so-called work sites, I think that's a bit tricky. What we really want to see is that within the unit, there should not be any occupants from other work sites staying together. So as far as possible, segregation must be done, or dedicated accommodation should be arranged separately for them.
So what we're saying is that some of them were playing the role of, say, engineers or managers, particularly with families. They don't need to be cohorted with the workers.
Yes, yes. So we just want to make sure that within the unit itself, their residential unit, there should not be any other occupants working on other work sites, if possible.
Okay, there are a number of questions that related to actually factory. One that says that the workers are not staying in dorm. They're clear. So can they go back to factory to start fabrication work?
So they can go back as long as they have been cleared the health code, the so-called that they have got a green light on the health code thing, so they can start their work.
Okay, and there are also questions about premises that houses both construction and manufacturing workers in the same premise, I assume, in this question. Is that something that is permitted?
Yeah, I think as far as possible, they should be segregated within the so-called premises. Like what I say, for FCD factory converted dorms, if they can be cohorted at least by floors, so there should not be intermixing of construction and non-construction site-based workers together.
Okay, so the basic principle, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so in other words, we will probably be seeing at one floor for all the construction-related workers, construction site workers. The other floor will be those that are not going to a construction site. And there should be minimized, the contact between both parties should be minimized.
Okay. Now, I just want to also hear invite Yip Ming to also come in and GCAP too, to also give some comments on the kind of standards of the dormitory. Maybe from GCAP, just a few insights into what the future dorm we are looking at, some of the broad principles, so that the members also aware, because you're not just planning restart. In the long term, you have to plan for proper housing. What is the kind of vision and picture we're seeing?
Yeah. So currently, most of the dormitories, in fact, also the factory converted dorms, we are seeing about 12 to 20 people per room. So for the new dorms, the new permanent dorms that we are looking at a reduction from the current capacity. So living conditions must be improved. So besides the reduction, capping a lower cap on the number of people that are staying in each room, we'll also be looking at bigger living spaces for the different parties, for the residents as well. I think this is important because that will reduce the mixing within keeping a safety distance within the room itself. The other part, of course, is the usage of single beds. So that's also something that we will perhaps see more of this rather than the double deck bunk beds, because the risk of infection is there if it's a double deck bunk bed.
Okay. Yip Ming, I understand, as we have discussed regularly about CTQs, and SCAL has come forward proactively with suggested solution. How can your members take advantage of this solution? We did talk about how to standardize it, and so that the approval is more ready and speedy. How can this solution be shared with the members, maybe?
Yeah, so on the CTQ, the new CTQ and also the TOLQ, those dormitory that built on the TOL land, actually SCAL is working out a modular design. That means it's standardized design. We are working with the BCAs. If the layout and also the room size and the number of story is typical, standardized, I think we can get I call it blanket approval for a prototype. So that I think when the contractor use that standard design to build at the site, they can get the approval faster because it has been approved by most of the authorities.
Thanks. So we encourage SCAL members to look at this prototype or this modular design. In fact, GK, if I'm not wrong, there's some already approved. So that shows that we can speedily approve this standardized, fairly standardized solution.
Yeah. If I may also allow me to actually share the actual specifications for the new dorms as well. I didn't want to go into the specific, but I thought maybe it's useful just to give a comparison.
Yes, yes. Please.
For example, currently we are having about 4.5 square meters per resident and in terms of living space. Moving forward, we are looking at 6 square meters per resident. And of course, the occupancy, we are looking at capping it at 10 beds per room, as part what was announced last Friday by in the press release as well. So in terms of toilets, we are also looking at more toilets per so-called per worker. Instead of 1:15, we are looking at 1 toilet for every 5 workers. So this is also even better standards than what is comparable to the international standards now. In terms of sick bay, in view of the current pandemic, there will be requirements for more provisions of bed spaces in the sick bays, but of course with the flexibility to actually increase it further on. So the space must be designed to be convertible to sick bays when there's a pandemic. So these are things that moving forward, these will be the new dorms that we will be looking at.
Okay, thank you. Now I finally turn over to Ketron, who holds a heavy responsibility in ensuring COVID-safe work sites. Now, maybe Ketron, I'd like to invite you to share high level, a few key learning points that the members should watch out for in order to clear this hurdle. Ketron, please, before we go into the more detailed questions.
Okay, I think first of all, I want to inform the industry that so far, we have tell the industry that it's going to be a slow start. So for the project that have been identified to start, these are actually prioritized projects that we are hand-holding them. Most of them are government projects. The other category of work that we are allowed to restart are renovation work for residential properties, both HDB, condominium, and landed property. So if you are doing renovation work at industrial or commercial properties, currently you will not be allowed to restart. Okay. Then we have actually received quite a number of appeals on to restart. Okay. Of course, we do entertain appeal, but the most important thing that you must satisfy is the 3 restart criteria. So I have gone through some of the appeal. Many of them don't have safe accommodation. Okay, and many of them are very ambitious. They are putting so many workers that are now stuck in the dorm. So definitely such appeal will not be allowed. Okay, so the only type of work that sensibly can get the approval, I would think, is the piling work, because this is the first activity, no need segregation, you know, and the number of workers probably around 10 to 20 can be easily housed. So that type of job maybe stand a much better chance. Okay. Then there's also a common query by some of those smaller contractors and specialist contractor who say that their workers cannot be cohorted with the main con because they only work at the site for only 1 or 2 days a week, and they work at multiple sites. So for that, we have addressed it in our advisory in Para 18 that they can house their workers at their own dorm, you know, factory, their own dedicated dorm, and they can send this worker to the construction site. Of course, when they are at the construction site, they need to be properly segregated from the rest of other workers, okay, and be under close supervision by an STO. Okay, that's the one of the criteria that we have imposed for such type of work by the specialist contractors. Example of that specialist contractor, it could be they can be installing doing waterproofing membrane, you know, on the floor for 1 day, and then next day they'll go to another site, or they are installing doors to some of the units. Okay. Okay, then I also want to cover this small project, because all those landed properties, they can actually come in to apply for restart. So just want to make sure, because landed properties can vary in size. Some of them are quite big, some are small. Okay, so for the smaller projects, we have a lesser or less stringent requirements. I think the only requirement that we want is that they need to only do a single activity at any one time. This is to prevent mixing of worker between 2 different trades. Okay? And each time the worker must not be more than 10. Okay? So of course, if you think that that activity require more than 10, you can actually appeal. Okay, and for restart, we are also allowing you to start and then make arrangement for the swab test to be done later. So there's a difference between big and small landed properties. So Chairman, these are the few points that I want to share with the industries.
Okay, thank you. I have also been alerted that there are a lot of people who raise hands who want to ask questions. We are catering for some extra time, so instead of that, I will now swing over to those who raise their hand to ask questions. So can the MC assist me?
Hi, can we have the first participant, Kahusia? Can you please unmute your mic? Thank you.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Yes, hi, thank you so much for answering our questions. So I just want to check, because we understand from the developer through yesterday's seminar that for show flat, we can apply under construction account works. So we went on to the form for application. We went on to the form under application to restart renovation work and construction account works, but we can't seem to select any option for that to state the address of the show flat, because renovation is only for residential and others doesn't allow, the option others doesn't allow you to state an address. So how do we write in to appeal, or do we still go through the form?
Okay, renovation work currently we only allow for residential. Your show flat don't come under this category. Show flat for outside. I mean, I would lump it together with industrial or commercial or others. So at the moment, we do not allow you to come in now. You need to wait until we have settled with the renovation for restive property first.
Okay, noted. Thank you so much. Sorry, just one more question. For the JSS, right, does it expire when the permit is granted? Like, for example, in July and August, we saw in our slide that it's extended. So is it for the whole industry, even for those companies that have the grant, that has resumed work already at site?
Yeah, it's regardless of the start state of the work.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Joseph. Joseph Chua.
Hi, Joseph. Can you unmute your mic, please?
Yeah, hi. I have a few questions. I think I reposted up, but let me reiterate what I need to ask. Okay, there's first one
We have no answer. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
The first one is talking about the 1 meter distancing, talking about the transportation of our ferrying our workforce. So I understand that there's a 25% reduction, but does it mean that the 1 meter distancing and is no longer in place?
Okay, can we answer this
wearing
first?
mask?
Yeah. Chikiat?
Yeah, the 1 meter I thought is no longer in place. We are just saying that they need to wear masks, and then the 25% reduction. I think SCAL have actually championed for this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Yeming.
Yeah, I think if you remember during the circuit breaker, I think the 1 meter distancing rule is enforced. I think you can only fetch 4 workers for the smaller lorries. So I think we have actually discussed with MOM that I think our distancing rule should be also same as the public transport. So after some discussion, I think we said that it's probably about 700 to 800 cm. So that's why we adopt this 75%, and I think MOM accept this proposal because our worker is also cohort in the same place, so the risks are actually much lower. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. This is indeed good news. A good news for the contractors. Okay. The second question is about the cohorting or so-called the residing facilities for a project. Is there any limitation, as in limitation of the maximum locations of different locations, so-called accommodations, serving one project?
Chikiat?
As a start, it really has to depend on your projects. As far as possible, I think we try to cohort as many as possible at one location. So for big projects, we are looking at maximum of 5 locations.
Oh, so there's a guide of maximum 5 locations.
Yes.
As you mentioned, it may be a big project, and the subcontractors, they have their own residing facilities, you see. So they have their own FCDs. They are requesting not to so-called decant to the so-called the CTQ on site.
Yes. So it also depends on the capacity of your CTQ.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we are taking a practical approach. As far as possible, we are saying that at the start, let's try to limit to 5 locations.
All right. Okay. The last question is talking about the restart of work in our HQ. I understand that we do not have to attain BCA's approval for the restart of the HQ, as in our head office. Is that true? Or because I've been hearing some of my friends are saying that in the industries, the same industry, they're saying that even for HQ, if there's workforce that is holding S-Pass holders, we need to actually attain this BCA approval. Is that true?
No. Grace?
Yeah, okay. Actually, if you refer to the advice, okay, you do not, if you have construction workers, I think you can just go to, in the advisory, actually there is already this website link that you can go to and just log in. I think over time, actually, we also have made some facilitative measures. Earlier on, we are talking about if let's say they are the PPH and S-Pass holders, they should also be subject to SOP before they could return to the office. But actually, we have over time relaxed this, and actually, as far as they stay in the office and they are staying in the HDB, the non-dom residential areas, actually we are okay for them to carry on with the work. So just go through the just go through it doesn't come to BCA, but actually you just go through the NTI, the normal approval. That's okay. But just remember that there is always this need for the safe management measures wherever it is in the workplace. And the pretext is actually, as far as possible, work from home for your workers. Yeah, even the professionals as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay,
basic principle
I think,
is segregation. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you answered my question perfectly. So the MTI is one that we need to get approval from lah. BCA is not necessary lah. Okay, good.
Yes. Yes.
Just one more question. Sorry, I just came across my
your last question.
last question. Okay.
There are long queue of people behind.
Yeah. Last question is about, I think it will be the same question as the rest. Okay, the last question is talking about the projects that is under the DLP. Okay, for example, we have a HDB projects. There's already handed over. Residents has already moved in, but there are still defects that we need to go back to so-called address. Is there an avenue for us to so-called attain approval to restart this part of the work?
I think this comes through appeal, right? Ketran?
Yeah, I have also received such queries. So if you go through our application form, then you'll be asking yourself under which category should they come in. So bearing in mind that once you got a TOP, I would not consider that as a project site anymore because the residents are actually staying there. So one way is that this is, to me, is part of the FM work, maintenance of buildings, FM. So this is one possible way.
Oh, meaning we can actually lodge in via this so-called the renovation works, renovation works and construction accounts works, because there's only,
Yes, construction accounts work. So under construction account, there's this FM, facility management. Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
So that's under facility management. Okay, all right. Thanks,
Okay,
panel.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Next, Shalin.
Hi, Shalin Chia, can you unmute yourself? Thanks. Shalin, your mic is unmuted already. You can start to speak.
Okay, I'm afraid we can't hear Shalin. With the long queue, let's move on.
Sure. Let's have next Kwan Yu Lau. We have granted you access to unmute your mic. Can you do so? Thanks. Perhaps we will go on to the next one, Chairman.
Okay, yes, please do.
Lien Ming Ho.
Okay.
Could you unmute yourself? Your mic is unmuted. Can you speak? There's no response. I think next will be Lee Tak Jun.
Lee Tak Jun.
Can you unmute? Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Can you speak louder?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I got two strict questions. The first one is that we got before 1st of June, we got a general exemption from NTI. to do up a construction of a temporary toilet at one of the quarter at the country. So my question is, I got the approval from MTI already. May I still continue to do the work after 2nd June, or I still need to get approval from BCA?
Ketron?
Okay, it depends. For those work, actually we allow you up to 15th of June to come in. Okay, so if your work need to, let's say, continue until next month, you need to apply for separate approval.
Okay, but the problem is when we check through the FW app, our worker, the color there is still indicate can work. So that's why we don't dare to mobilize.
Grace here, Chairman, maybe can I just add on?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So for this, can I just clarify that the workers is construction workers that you are
Yes.
deploying?
Yes, it's a construction worker.
So previously, have you submitted, during the CB circuit breaker period, did you submit to BCA for approval?
No, we last time we submit to the MTI. So we just submit the general assumption. So now the condition is we call up the MTI before 1st of June, then they say of BCA. But when we go to the BCA or the circular, we didn't see any avenue for us to apply for continue the work. So that's why we didn't mobilize any work in this case.
This is under the construction account works. Yeah, so please submit,
Submit
Yeah, so in this case, okay, let me add, because you never get our exemption earlier, you need to come in immediately, no more up to 15th of June. No?
Okay, but the problem is when we did try to apply to the construction account, but they wrote, they say the worker whether you done the swab test or not. So we stuck there because all my workers never done any swab test in this moment.
So you just indicate that they have not done swab tests.
Okay, great.
Make the submission,
Okay, great. The last question is
yes, but make sure this is essential services that you are performing, because actually we are also very stringent, and I mean, if you try not to push in all the workers at one go, because some of your workers again may also be actually still stuck in the dormitory lah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Your next question.
My last question is that my office HQ here, before 1st of June, we got a general assumption from MTI. So to do some of the paperwork. My question is, after 2nd of June, is my colleague which are S-Pass holder able to come to office to do work in the HQ only?
So I think this is a similar question as the earlier on question. If let's say the workers are only working in the HQ office, not site office, I emphasize, HQ office, yeah, then actually they will also be able to make submission, and then they will be able to resume work. Just go through if let's say it's a construction account workers, you just go through that link that is in the advisory.
Thanks a lot. That is my last question already. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We move to the next one. Sorry,
Cheng
Kelvin.
Wong. Sorry, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Yi Cheng Wong first, please. Okay,
How about,
maybe we
Kelvin
move.
go?
Yes, we move to Kelvin. Is
sorry,
that
Yi Cheng Wong is online.
Yes, correct.
Okay, please, your question.
Okay, there was a new item added to the safe work criteria FAQ yesterday. One of the items under the safe accommodation. Okay, for those people who live in HDB or private residential properties. Okay, if they were to stay in the same place as those who work at other projects, construction projects. So I understand from this FAQ that they have to be cohorted to the worksite, CTQ or TOLQ. Does this apply to engineers, professionals like engineers, project managers, RTOs, and REs as well?
Yeah, Chiket.
Okay, I'll take that question. For all those I think we can actually house them at other dedicated accommodation as long as there's no other occupants working on the other construction sites. So it's to prevent the intermixing of different parties. So you don't have to cohort them on site, but you can find other dedicated housing such that there are no other so-called occupants working on other construction sites housed together.
Okay, so the principle is don't mix, okay, for their safety too.
Understand. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next we have Tian Yi Tan.
Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have this question. From my understanding, our essential work, we can continue until 15. And if you want to continue further after 15, we need to apply this application online, right? Then there's one application online for this swab test for essential worker. But this only apply for HDB, PRP, TLQ, and GSF. How about my worker from FCD?
If you're, okay, Chairman, maybe I take this question.
Yes.
If your workers is actually in the dormitory, it will be subjected to the dormitory's arrangement for the regular swab test. But one thing that I want to clarify with you also is actually if you are doing essential works, right, essential services, please submit ASAP. Yeah, don't wait until 14 June, because actually
we have already submit the essential work for this one. So now, for now, we just wait for BCA notice for us to go for swab test, is it?
Yeah, for those in the community lah.
Okay, then I have another question. Is it possible that my subcon overstay in their own dormitory? Because on my site is actually A&A works in a shopping mall where we are not possible to stay on site. So is it possible for all my subcon to stay at their own dormitory, but they cohort them within their own dormitory based on project?
I'll take that question. Yeah, so no issue with that as long as they can house them all together. Yeah, but if let's say your subcons, right, they can band together and put one block within the PPDs, that would be great.
Okay.
I mean, you as the main con can help to manage that. That will be great.
Okay. Okay. Another question. What is the arrangement for the swab test for employees staying in dormitory? May I know?
What is the arrangement? Sorry, what is the arrangement?
Okay, is there any arrangement or criteria for the swab test for employees staying in dormitory?
Yes, that is managed by MOM. Yeah, they have the.
How about those not stay in dormitory, like staff or those?
Not stay in dormitory, that means they will be in the HDB, PRP, private property.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. That is the one that actually BCA will step in to support the arrangement of the swab test in the initial period.
So okay, for now,
that's why when you make the submission, right, then we will be able to have the details of your workers, and then we can also make appointment with you for the workers. But I also want to share that once you are given, anyone here who are given the appointment, right, please stick to the appointment and do not change it, because actually then you are wasting resources lah. So that's what I wish to highlight as well. And also don't ask your workers to go very early, because actually you will also, I mean, we also always wanted to maintain safe distancing measures and not to jam up the place as well. That's why actually it's spread in time slot. Just follow the time slot will do.
Okay.
So
thank you.
If my worker haven't take the swab test by 15 June, can they still continue to do their essential service?
That's why I would say that please submit ASAP, then we can make the arrangement. We'll try our best.
Okay, thank you. We have time for 3 more persons. Next we have Kek Jen Lim. Please keep your question. Please keep your question short.
I would just like to ask about the CTQ. So I refer to the BCA FAQ Safe Restart Section B, question 7. So all the approval need to get from BCA as well and require the approval from MOM. So may I know whether we clear MOM first, then apply BCA, or we concurrently submit together for BCA and MOM?
Ticket?
Yeah, okay. The intention is that you can go through our one-stop shop front to do that. So on our end, we will actually go help to facilitate all these things rather than you go to multiple agencies to get the clearances.
All right, understand.
Yeah, but I just want to clarify that if you already obtain the approval, there's no need for you to come back to us again on that.
You mean approval from the MOM, then we do
Yeah,
not need.
because there were also queries that earlier if you have already applied to MOM and also gotten approval, all those things, so you don't have to come back to that shop front.
I see. So, sorry, one more question. So when I built this CTQ, my workers who built the CTQ, do they have to? Can they just stay on site on a TLQ? We just built a temporary TLQ. That's existing.
Yes, but to get the workers to restart the works, you still have to apply to us, lah.
All right. Okay, understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Vincent Lee.
Can you please unmute yourself, Vincent?
Hi. It was.
Go ahead, Vincent.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Pertaining to the application for restart, in the advisory, it said that the BCA will notify specific project to submit the restart proposal, right? So for the CTQ itself, would it be we need to submit separately to MOM, or in the proposal to submit for the restart, it will be inside the
proposal? This is more on CTQ construction as a part of the restart, right? Kitchen, be able to answer. Or Chike also okay.
Okay, mate. Mr. Chu, are you answering, or you got to unmute your mic, Mr. Chu?
Chika, can you take these questions?
Oh, okay, can. So for the restart, for the workers, you still need to apply to BCA. But for the CTQ, you just go to the one-stop shop front. That is for the technical clearances. So basically, there are two processes. One is actually to clear, in terms of technical clearances, whether you can build a CTQ. The other part is really for the restart to get the workers to start. So that is through the appeal channel.
Okay, so for the restart, only the government, the BCA will notify the specific project. So that means we just wait, right? Meanwhile, while we are waiting, we can actually submit to start the CTQ. Am I right to say that?
To submit the application to build a CTQ, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, can. It's a separate process.
Okay, can.
Okay.
Okay, regarding the essential, sorry, one more question. Essential service, previously BCA sent an email to say that for those essential workers, we need to use the COP pass and then register them for swab test, right? Okay, so till now, we still haven't received anything for the swab test, but in the email, it stated that you need to, after the arrangement of swab test, we need to submit again to before 15th of June, right? So if let's say we don't receive the swab test at all, then how are we going to submit the continue of the essential work?
Sorry, maybe I can. Can you just clarify also, you have already submitted or you have not submitted?
Submitted to do the swab test, but haven't submitted to continue to work after 15 June.
Okay. Then can you also submit to continue to work?
Also submit both together?
Yes.
Okay.
We probably also have received your earlier request for the nominal roles of the workers. Let me explain why there's a few, these two submissions. It's because our officer really wanted to facilitate that early planning of this swab test. That's why we also ahead of the ready website link for the application itself. We go ahead and get it from you first. So right now that the website link is already ready, maybe you can also put it in there. Yeah.
Okay, can. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, we take the last question. I don't know what to disappoint everyone, but because time is up, so let's hear from Jamshid bin Muhammad Osman.
Can you unmute yourself, please? I think perhaps we move on.
Okay, looks like we take Brandon then. Brandon Su.
Can you please unmute?
Yep, can you hear me?
Okay, Brandon, go ahead.
Okay, actually it's regarding the SG Work app. Even though we have received approval from BCA for our workers to carry on, right? The SG Work app actually shows probably red or gray for workers staying in HDB and all. And then during the circuit breaker period, which is on 1st of June, actually it shows all green. 2nd of June, it suddenly just turned red and gray.
Okay, I think for this one, because I understand from MOM, this is quite a new system lah. So I think can I have some of your details, then we can refer back. Have you spoken to MOM on this?
I spoken to MOM yesterday morning.
Yesterday.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Or maybe
Okay. This is this is the
okay.
thing. The thing is that they asked me to email in, but the officer gave me information that even my workers staying in dormitory that shows green are able to come out to work. Out of the 12 persons staying in the same room, one of them actually have a green, able to come out to work. So the hotline told us that we can allow them to come out to work. But the moment he tried to leave the dormitory MOM stopped him.
Okay. I think can we take these details offline, then we can link up together, discuss, have a discussion with MOM?
Yeah, sure. Okay, but just to clarify, what about those people staying in HDB now that shows red or green? Because we already received approval from you guys to state that we can carry on working.
Yeah,
but when we scan their pass,
we will
it still shows red and gray.
Details, then we can better advise. Is that okay?
Sure. Okay, but at the meantime, can they carry on working? That's the question.
I will need the details from you because actually you are telling me that the person is red. Just let me take a look. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Okay, thank you all. There are really a lot of questions, and we hope to be able to answer you through the post-webinar wrap-up. We will compile them into topics and, again, FAQ type of answer. And do pay attention to the circular and advisories because they do change in the past weeks. So look at follow-up closely. Now, before I end, I want to just invite Yip Ming to see if you have any parting words or advice for your members.
Yeah, I think we have received such a overwhelming support. There are many questions, 1,763 questions to be answered. I think we know that actually there are many questions on how to start work, and also there are some I think probably confusion on the application between MTI and BCA. I think if possible, I think we can simplify it further so that I think all the companies can actually submit one stop. It would be better if we can have one stop submission for this between MTI and BCA in the future. So I think for SCAL, I think we also probably will come out some webinar on probably an advice or guideline on how to work on a specific project, real life projects. It's just a tutorial like that, so that I think more people will understand, how to, use the principle of, a bubble concept, by BCA, the not intermixing, the principle, application on site. So you wait for our, announcement for that. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thanks, Yip Ming. Now, before we end, let me just offer a few practical suggestions for what companies can do during this time. Then I'm going to touch a little bit about self-help. So there are 3 criteria. I hope by now everybody can almost memorize the requirement by heart. A few tips here to watch out. One is save workforce. Do take stock as far as possible all your current workforce. Check the nominal row with the names. We do have issues where people make the submissions and with error entries. this actually does not help the processing. So this is something we think it can be minimized. Yeah. The second thing is take stock of their health status. As far as possible, keep a good record, knowing your workers as far as their swab tests done or scheduled. It is quite frustrating when swab test capacity was arranged, but there was no show. So, I mean, some are valid reasons, no doubt, but we again want to minimize this. So take note of all their full health details so that when we do process, it's a lot faster. There is a COVID-safe courses that workers have to take. Our academy has already ramped up all the training sessions, and my understanding is it's to be done on the mobile device with pictorial and simple questions. Get them passed quickly. This it's not a requirement for the approval and the restart. However, we need the workers to understand what they need to do when they go on site. So on the safe accommodation, as mentioned earlier on, MON has a website now to inform you of the clear dorm. Monitor that very closely because it changes daily, literally, as the dorms are cleared. You want to know whether your workers are cleared because during all the shutdown, they have rearranged workers and placed them in different locations and things like that. So it's no longer based on the original arrangement, and you need to know where they are and whether they are clear in that particular block. So it's that detail. And you do have existing own arrangement, make sure the safe measures are put in place. And I think Chiket has already mentioned the one-stop shop. And we are very happy that SCAL can also offer their template to work on this standard design so that approval can be granted rapidly, quickly. Lastly, on Safe Worksite, I know that Ketron didn't have a chance to actually talk too much about it today. We have looked through the submissions. Some are very ambitious. You want to actually literally run like business as usual before COVID. It's very challenging because you're learning new ways of managing site. I don't know enough, and certainly even for very experienced builder, this is something new. So we will advise you to get the restart faster going to keep maybe a more manageable scale instead of having the full workforce on site, so that together with us, we can kind of make sure that the measures are effective. So, and also maintain the integrity of segregation. And last but not least, please work together, make sure that this COVID-19 does not have a chance to research or re-emerge. This is a very last thing that the built environment or construction sector really need. So with that, I will declare the end of this session. We are organizing further webinar, and also to keep you all updated. The week 1 of this month or the following 2 months, we're looking at the further webinars. During week 2, week 3, we have very intensive work sessions with SCAL, with TACs, involving also MND. Second Minister is very involved in this, including MOS. So we are in deep dialogue, and the moment we have new information will be passed through the associations as well. And every 3rd week, we will also provide regular monthly update on the subsequent restart details. Now, I want to just leave one last message here. Some of you may feel that you are waiting for projects to restart, waiting for us to inform you. That's really not our intention. Our intention is to look at availability of resources, criticality of projects, safety concerns. Therefore, we work on certain projects to understand how the restart can work. Now, time has come. You can see the renovation approval has shot up tremendously because we reach a level of learning. We know that they can start safely. So we have actually allowed that to move forward rapidly. Now, next thing is the main building works. So I have also mentioned to SCAL President, we want to work together with SCAL to look at self-help. There will be a self-help kit that will come up fairly soon. We're talking about next 2 days if possible, to allow you to take the self-help kit and see whether you can pass all the 3 criteria. And if you can, we have a chance to push you to restart earlier. And on that note, I also asking SCAL President Mang to help us conceptualize and package in terms of risk assessment, in terms of types of projects, who can restart, what can restart. And we're happy to work with SCAL to advance this group of projects. So on that note, I really thanks and appreciate Mang and the Council for offering the tremendous help for us to restart. All right, I think we've come to the end of this session. I really appreciate all your attentiveness, and also like to thank all my panelists for providing all the answers. With that, I thank you all and wish you all the best, and we'll keep in contact. I hand over to MC.
Thank you, Webinar Chairperson, panelists and speakers for the valuable insights about the COVID-safe restart policies, considerations, and processes. It has been a fruitful pre-lunch session. We've come to the end of this session. After exiting this webinar, you will be directed to access an evaluation form for today's session. Once submitted, you will be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. On this note, BCA would like to acknowledge and thank SCAL for collaborating this webinar with us. Thank you to all participants as well. You've made our webinar a success. Stay safe, stay well. Signing off, Hui Wen from BCA Academy.